Ladies and gentlemen, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to read you the Steele Dossier and its absurd allegations that have never been verified. Steele Dossier doesn't make broad generalizations. It makes specific allegations, categorical statements. It comes to ironclad conclusions, all of which are a bunch of nonsense. I'll get to that in a second. But the reason I'm going to read you the Steele Dossier is an interesting article. Ex-FBI lawyer officials were quite worried. Why are they quite worried? James Comey appeared to be blackmailing Trump with dossier. Why would... This is a very, very important question. Why would James Comey not inform President Trump that he was under investigation, but then showed Trump the dossier in front of President Obama right before January 20th? So when President Obama was still president, you had an incoming president in Donald Trump. And then Jim Comey, salt of the earth, Jim Comey, went in and said, hey, you know what? Here we have this dossier, incoming President-elect Trump. We have this dossier. We're going to show you this. And it's not verified yet. But what do you think about it? That's leverage over President Trump. That's leverage. You're talking about leverage. You're talking about trying to intimidate Trump using the Steele Dossier. Former FBI General Counsel James Baker said this week that he and other officials were quite worried that former FBI Director James Comey appeared to be blackmailing then President-elect Trump during a 2017 meeting regarding the salacious allegations found in the Steele Dossier. Where are the bodily fluids raining down upon Madam Cyberhack? Where are they? Is she immune to this? I think not. On the latest episode of the Yahoo... Okay, so Baker said he and others were so concerned about Comey briefing Trump on January 6, 2017 on Russia's interference in the election, as well as the controversial dossier, that, quote, analogies were made to J. Edgar Hoover, the former FBI director who famously abused his power to blackmail individuals. We were quite worried about the Hoover analogies, and we were determined not to have a disaster happen on our watch. Well, you had more than that, and you're under criminal investigation, James Baker. Baker said, hoping to convey to the incoming president that they did not want to continue, quote, the legacy of Hoover. Okay, so they did worse than anything J. Edgar Hoover did. Well, J. Edgar Hoover did a lot of really bad things. So I would say just as bad or perhaps even more salacious than anything Hoover engaged in. Baker did not recall the first moments he heard about the Steele Dossier, but remembered the Bureau taking it seriously and said they were obligated to deal with it and determine whether or not anything about it was true. No, they were not. This is false. I'm going to read you the Steele Dossier in a second. The Steele Dossier is a bunch of nonsense written by somebody paid to write a bunch of nonsense by Hillary Clinton. You might as well have had Clinton writing the nonsense. This was used as leverage against President Trump. This was used as a way to intimidate President Trump. That's it. That's it. This was a way to utilize a bunch of gossip to say, hey, you know what? We have something over you. We have something over you, and if you dare let me go, if you dare think of replacing me, President Trump, well, you're going to feel the wrath or whatever. This was a way to intimidate and a way to control President Trump. Look, if somebody said, hey, Jay, I found a video of you having romantic relationships with farm animals. You better give me money or else I'll show the world. I'll show the world the video. I'll be like, you know what? Gosh, that's embarrassing. Guess you gotta show the world. I ain't paying you nothing. That's the way to deal with blackmail. That's the way to deal with somebody who tries to manipulate you. Oh yeah, I have this. All right, go ahead. I'm going to put it all over Facebook. Go ahead. It's fine. Facebook's going to be MySpace in about 5 years. Who cares? I'm going to put this all over Twitter. No, that's fine. Go ahead. I'm not even on Twitter. Nah. I'm not on Twitter or Facebook, so go ahead. And the same thing would have happened. Really, the same thing would have taken place with President Trump. President Trump doesn't care. And in fact, if you try to do something like that against President Trump, what takes place is the opposite takes place. He then says, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ensure that not only do you not have this to, not only do you not have this to utilize some kind of leverage over me, but I'm gonna fire you. I'm gonna let you go. And that's what he did. So you can't, when you try to engage in that kind of manipulation, what it is manipulation. That's exactly what took place. James Comey tried to manipulate President Trump and said, oh, we have a bunch of gossip and nonsense that might hurt you politically. And we're the FBI, and we're looking at this, and you know what? We're the FBI, we're looking at this, and, not to say that we're going to, it's unverified, we have it in our possession. We have it in our possession. That's not only egregious, but that's an example of somebody who is trying to manipulate and extort or, try to use leverage over somebody to get them to acquiesce or to get them to do something they want. And that's something you don't do against Trump, because Trump is from New York, from a city where he's a real estate mogul. And I love people who are like, oh my God, he's not that rich. It's like, you know what? Let's say you dwindle his empire down to 400 million, 300 million. It's still, it's enough. But it's what? He's been, the estimate is what, 3 billion? Whatever. Even if he's a billion, even if he has 1 billion, even if he has 300 million, that is not something to be ashamed of. Like, the haters are so petulant. Oh, yeah, you've been bankrupt so many times. You only have a 300 million. It's like, most people are happy with a couple, 3, 4, 5 million. Well, 1 million's good. 500,000's great. But that is not what you do to President Trump. It's completely unverified. It's complete nonsense. And let's just look at it here. Okay. When people say it's been verified, nothing has been verified. And when I say nothing, absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So Carter Page. Let's look at Carter Page, shall we? Okay, so goes on to say that he was working with basically operatives of the Kremlin. It's a whole bunch of nonsense, but hold on. This is actually better. So Manafort, there's a bunch of good stuff. Speaking in confidence to a compatriot in late July 2016, source B, an ethnic Russian close associate of Republican U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump, admitted that there was a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation between them and the Russian leadership. This was managed on the Trump side by Republican candidate campaign manager Paul Manafort. No. Wrong. There was nothing. There wasn't a well-developed endeavor to conspire. Nobody was charged with that. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it was a bunch of nonsense. This was managed on the Trump side by the Republican candidate campaign manager Paul Manafort, who was using foreign policy advisor Carter Page and others as intermediaries. No, that never happened. So the imbeciles and the fools on Twitter who are like, it's been verified. The Steele Dossier has been verified. Nothing's been unverified. No, you're talking about a bunch of lies. Just because a lie is unverified doesn't mean it will never be verified. That's what's called a lie. That's what's called a lie. That's why when people something that's not true will never be verified. It's not the truth that's just unverified yet. No, it's actually something not true. That's what's called something that is not true at all. You don't say, gosh, the Loch Ness Monster has yet to be verified, but it's there. Nah, it's just, a fantasy. The Tooth Fairy is yet to be verified, but it's there. No, it's not. Santa Claus is yet to be verified, but it's there. But he's there. He's the man. He knows when you've been sleeping or naughty, and you be bad or good. Be good for goodness sake. You know this. You know the song. He knows when you've been sleeping. He knows when you're awake. That's like one of the Democratic senators. She's hilarious. She's like, our grifter-in-chief, our horrible grifter-in-chief, the worst president ever, Donald J. Trump. Why don't you just admit that you're a Democratic partisan? It's like, what? What? William Barr is like, what are you talking about? Why don't you confess to your sins that you've been a Democratic partisan or a Republican part? You're basically like Sean Hannity working for our grifter-in-chief, Donald J. Trump. Anyway, this was managed on the Trump side by the Republican candidate campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who was using foreign policy advisor Carter Page and others as intermediaries. Well, that never happened. Ever. Never happened. Never happened. So, ex-Ukrainian President Yanukovych confides directly to Putin that he authorized kickback payments to Manafort, though that never happened either, as alleged in Western media. He didn't plead guilty to that. The Steele Dossier wasn't used as any indictment. Ukraine revelations played part, wanted Manafort for it, especially Lewandowski, who remains influential. They never wanted Lewandowski. I mean, then you have Michael Cohen, leading Duma figure reportedly involved as plausible facilitator, may have participated in August meeting with Cohen. Cohen never met with any lawyer Michael Cohen and Kremlin representatives in August in 2016. Never met. Michael Cohen never, although he he eventually didn't really flip on Trump, but he wanted a reduced sentence for all the criminal activity he did because of his failed taxi business. But he never met with any operatives. Kremlin representative in 2016. He went in Prague. Okay. Was being used as a cover for this relationship, and its office in Prague may have well been used to host the Cohen Russian presidential administration meeting. No, it doesn't actually. It doesn't even say categorically, even in this ridiculous nonsensical. That never happened. Never happened. Ever happened. Never, ever, ever happened. He was never even in Prague. Now, the whole DNC emails thing, the only when people say, well, you know what, he said it's been corroborated. No, it hasn't. We have no clue what happened with the DNC. CrowdStrike, there's a chance it could have been hacked. Yeah, right. CrowdStrike is the only company to look at DNC servers. We have no clue if CrowdStrike gave pristine copies of the DNC servers to the United States government. That's why the ODNI and DHS reports come with warranty disclaimers. We reported previously in our company report of 19 October 2016 from the same source that Cohen met officials from PA legal department clandestinely in an EU country. No, he didn't. This was in order to clean up the mess left behind by Western media. Revelations of Trump ex-campaign manager corrupt relationship with former pro-Russian President Yanukovych. Clinton's campaign chairman's brother was actually working with Manafort. This is how hilarious this whole thing is. None of these allegations are correct. None. And we know this because none were used for indictments. This was never used for indictments. You think the Steele Dossier was used to indict one person? No, it wasn't. We can go on forever. I mean, this whole thing is nonsense. It's just a bunch of nonsense. It's absolutely a bunch of nonsense. Now we have, in terms of Ukraine is talked about a lot here, now we have Hillary Clinton actually being investigated in the Ukraine, or her actions being investigated as trying to find dirt on Manafort. So there was nothing here. Trump associate admits Kremlin behind recent appearance of DNC emails on WikiLeaks. No, there's never been a Trump associate admitting that the DNC emails were the result of Assange or anyone else. No. See, again, this is... it's written like a Democratic operative would write, which is what happened. A Democratic operative wrote this. Behind the recent leak of embarrassing email messages. Again, the Democratic line is that it's embarrassing. Why can you possibly ask? And I'm officially going out there and saying Bernie Sanders is a good person. I can't condemn him too much because in his warped brain he probably thinks he's doing something good. But he's a coward. The guy has engaged in the most cowardly act. He has propped up this Russia, and he even just recently said, there shouldn't have been any investigation of Trump. You know, Bernie, it hurts me to say this, but there's a dossier written by a Green Party member about you, Bernie. Not really. I'm joking, but let's just go with it. And the Green Party member alleges that you've been working with you've been working with Scandinavian intelligence to forcibly, through a military surreptitious military covert act to implement Medicare for All.
You mean to tell me that the Green Party wrote a dossier about yours truly? I just want to let you know something right now. I have never been in contact with Scandinavian intelligence, and in fact, the phrase itself is an abomination. Are you talking about the intelligence of Finland? Or the intelligence of Sweden? Or the intelligence of Denmark? What are you talking about? Scandinavia is more than just one country. Why don't you read a little bit? Scandinavia is a region in Northern Europe with strong historical, cultural, and linguistic ties. Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Oh, you left out Finland, eh? What's going on here? No, Finland and Iceland, of course. These are known as the Nordic countries, by the way. And I'll give you a history lesson on the Vikings in a moment. But I just want to let you know something, Jill Stein, if you're listening. You better not let the dogs out. The hounds, the green dogs. You think you're going to let them out on me? You got another thing coming. Because I too can bark, and my bite is bigger than my bark. If you know what I mean. So, keep your attack vehicles away from me with your ridiculous dossier that you've written about my insidious plans to implement Medicare for All. And no, by the way, I don't like bodily fluids raining down upon me. That's Trumpy. How do we know that? Because Hillary Clinton purchased a pristine dossier that has never been verified and never will. And you purchased a dossier against me, the Green Party. Can you believe anything more absurd? So whereas I am I'm backing up the Steele Dossier because the Democrats bopped me over the head with a 2x4 and it was my fault. My cranium was in the way. I am now very upset, even though I'm backing the Steele Dossier and saying that it's absolutely 100% verified and perfect, that James Comey should use that to intimidate Trump. The Green Party has no right to buy a dossier from none other than Christopher. No, it's actually Bartholomew Steele, Christopher's second cousin once removed. Christopher Steele had a cousin named Bartholomew. And what happened was the Steele Dossier, the Green Party purchased the dossier just to undermine me. So I don't like that dossier, but I love the Steele Dossier. I'm sorry. I had to subject you all through that to that. Even Bernie Sanders he's backing the origins, the beginning of all of this nonsense. Why? Because it wasn't utilized against him. That is, you're not going to get lofty left-wing ideals. The left is supposed to be against authoritarian. It's supposed to be against secret police and authoritarian investigations and dictatorial powers and all of these things. Even against people they don't like. But you see, Bernie Sanders is just fine. He's just fine with it. No problem. He's okay with it.
He knows this. He knows the Russians didn't hack the DNC to inform the country he was cheated. What kind of fool would believe that? That's stupid. Bill Clinton met with Vladimir Putin. Bill Clinton met with Vladimir Putin in 2010 when the uranium deal was going down. Do you think that it was, and it's an example of, you think that this is like an example of Russia fearing Hillary Clinton? Why? Why would they fear Hillary Clinton? Then Clinton's like, oh my gosh, the uranium deal's been debunked. No, it hasn't been debunked. It went through. Vladimir Putin at the time owned 20% of U.S. uranium capacity. It went through. What you think's been debunked is that Clinton owned 20% of it, which, yeah, nobody really said that. Maybe a couple sites or whatever. Who cares? What these fact checkers do for Clinton, and what Clinton does is she says, oh, it's been debunked. No, the most absurd claims have been debunked. Fine. Everything else is, hey, you know what? Why did money flow into the Clinton Foundation? Has anybody ever answered that? Why did Uranium One officials give money to the Clinton Foundation? Why? Has anyone ever answered that? My God Almighty, has anyone ever answered that? So they were worried about. So this is ex-FBI officials were quite worried that Comey appeared to be blackmailing Trump with Dossier. Of course they were. Of course they were. Of course they were. What do you think was going to happen? What do you think was going to happen? That they knew very well. They knew very, very, very well that the second that Comey the second that Comey went ahead and gave President Trump the dossier, it was an example. It was an example of corrupt officials who wanted to use their post to manipulate and to intimidate an incoming president. There's zero evidence. 2 years, they have egg on their face. They're so embarrassed. They have absolutely nothing to show for 2 years of an investigation. Absolutely nothing to show. And all they can do is... They actually forgot about obstruction. Have I even brought it up now? Now they're just worried. Now they just want the complete unredacted report. It's like they go back and forth. They don't know what they're talking about. And they're like, oh yeah, Trump Jr. needs to testify. It's like, no. And President Trump's like, yeah, I'm not going to help you out with it. I'm not going to comply with any of these ridiculous investigations. Like, you better comply. It's like, nah, sorry. Go ahead, go to the courts. See if you can get the Supreme Court to back you up after 2 years of nonsense. Give me your thoughts below. Check out my writing in the Federalist. That is below in the pinned comment. The Jerusalem Post, the Daily Caller, and my Patreon is below if you want to support my voice long term. Nick DiPaolo, check him out. He's fantastic. I was dying laughing. I'm like dying laughing every time I hear him, and he's great, and he has a great mentality on politics. I love it. Nick DiPaolo is one of the great comedians of our generation. Really, he's amazing. Black Conservative Patriot is awesome. He does amazing work, and he needs to be at 1 million subs. We need somebody to counter. We have people to counter a lot on the left, but we don't have anyone who does what he does. The editing of all the different, you hear it from the mouths of people who are trying to spin the narrative, and the way Black Conservative Patriot does it, the way BCP does it, is just fantastic. Subscribe to Black Conservative Patriot on YouTube. He's absolutely awesome, and thank you again for the shout out, and feel free to use any of my clips anytime. Thank you, BCP. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, check out my videos later today. Big day today. Thank you.